Hello and welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Becca, so if you don't know me, now you do. Today, I'm going to do a really quick August wrap-up. I read 3 books and Softy and left 1, so not a ton to get through, but I made up for it in my enormous fall TBR. I want to say a couple things. So one, August is done and dusted, which also means summer is. The unfortunate thing is that I still had a couple of books on my summer TBR that I didn't quite knock out. I think I had This Summer Will Be Different, which I think is my biggest bummer because I love Carly Fortune. A little bit Olives got left behind. The Summer Will Be Different got left behind. Was there another summer one? I think that might have been it. There might have been a couple of summery thrillers that I didn't quite get to, but I did pretty good. I will say something to know, something for your information. FYI. I posted about it on TikTok and Instagram, so if you came from there, then you know. But it was kind of a weird month for me in terms of mental health. I have anxiety, if you couldn't tell by my nonstop chatter. I have anxiety, and so sometimes I find reading can make my anxiety better, or sometimes it can make my anxiety worse if I'm starting to just, a lot of times the thoughts in my head can't quiet long enough for me to actually read the story, and I realize that I'm reading the page. And then I'm it's funny. Sometimes I'm reading and I'm reading it and I'm reading it and I'm reading the words. I can feel my brain. They're going in, but I'm not obviously, but I'm also thinking another train of thought. And so what happens is I'll get to the bottom of a page or bottom of a paragraph and realize that I'm not reading. And my inner voice says to myself, sorry, I wasn't listening, because when I read, I hear the words. I think that people are in camps where either they do hear a voice when they're thinking their thoughts, their own voice, and sometimes they just don't, which if you don't, I'm fucking fascinated by that. But my voice will be to myself, I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. So if I get to that point, reading's just not really feasible for me. Sometimes audiobooks is better, because then what I do with audiobooks is that I will make the book the speed at which I think thoughts, so that my thoughts can't start to overpower, because I think faster than I read. But if I can listen as fast as I think, then that sometimes is better. I hope that made sense. I don't know. I could be crazy. I'm a crazy goofy girl, but I don't know. Anyway, so August was kind of those it was just constantly turning up here, which meant that the pages weren't constantly turning. I meant one page, and I'd be I have no idea what I just read. Besides the fact that I didn't get to read as much because my anxiety was just higher, I also think it's fine if you read 1 book a month, 2 books a month, 25 books a month, 0 books a month. Whatever. It doesn't matter. I know there's an intellectual integrity conversation going around some of the book community, and I'm out. I don't have the time. Audiobooks count, sure. The thing is with audiobooks is when I think about, did you get your scratch in? Okay. You good? Cause we're busy here. Do you want to come here? I'll take off your collar. Anyway, I think Scout with the scratching. I know it's hot as shit. If you let me finish, I can turn the air conditioning back on. I know. I'll put the jingle jangle back on after. Lord have mercy. Okay. I read 3 books in August, and that's fine. These are the 3 books that I read. What are they? I read 3 books, and they are all good picks. It is funny to see that I read 3 books in August, and then to also see these stacks of books around me being this is my fall TBR. Yeah, I'll do that in 3 months. I read this in 1 month. So what am I... it's that meme that's well, if it isn't the consequences of my own actions. Anyway, I read 3 books in August. I read one that's dystopian, I would say. Dystopian, sci-fi is what it is. And then I read a romance. And then I read a literary fiction, which was my book of the month pick for August. And then I soft DNF'd 1. And I'll go into why it's soft and why I ended up DNFing it at all. But first up, what I read, which I'm so excited about. My boyfriend immediately read this first one, and then he's now on the 3rd one. I feel my toxic book trait is I don't read one and then read the next one in the series. I have to read things in between other things. I don't know. I don't want anybody to think I have favorites. My books. I don't want them to think I have favorites amongst them. I can't have an uprising. You know what I mean? Let me just introduce it first. So first of all, we have Red Rising by Pierce Brown. Now, this is definitely one of the books that was on my fall TBR. But my boyfriend read it first and was like, please read this now. I need to be able to talk to you about it. Please read this now. So I did. I did read it in August instead of adding it to my fall TBR. But it's a good thing it's not on the fall TBR because holy crap, there's a lot of books here. You'll see. Red Rising by Pierce Brown. It was originally a trilogy. It even says on here, book 1 of the Red Rising trilogy. Don't let that trick you. There are 2 more after this in the original trilogy, and I think 2 or 3 more after that. So, trilogy it is not. Not if you're a completionist. I don't know if you read the 3, if you could be like, I'm good now, or if you want to keep going, but I'm a completionist, so if I start reading it, they will all be read. So, that's just the way it is. Things will never be the same. Okay, Red Rising, Pierce Brown. If you are a fan of the Hunger Games, you'll love this book. It reminds me of Hunger Games. It also reminds me of Ender's Game, and I think it's like a mixture of the two because it is sci-fi and it is in space, sort of like it's in space, but it is very like Hunger Game-esque. What threw me for this book, so don't let it throw you, is that I was expecting more sci-fi and less Hunger Games. I actually didn't expect Hunger Games going into it at all. So that threw me. Like, I'm glad that my boyfriend, whose name is Aubin, so that I can stop saying boyfriend, Aubin read this first. And I was like reading it. And I think I was a third of the way in. And I was like, we've spent a lot of time in the part that's like about the Hunger Games. Like, when do we get out of it? He goes, oh, no, that's the book. The book is them in that. And I was like, oh. So, like, buckle up. Like, we got a long time with that, which I thought it was, like, a part of the story, and then it was going to be, like, that's the part, and then we move on to the next thing, and it wasn't. That's what this book is. So, it was still really good. I think I gave it either 4 or 4.5 stars. I think I gave it 4. And the reason that I gave it 4 is because I feel like it's a lot to process. And I think if you aren't used to reading sci-fi, or if you're not used to reading, I would say like fantasy readers could get into this pretty easily, but it's gory, it's violent, there are definitely trigger warnings. Look that up if that's going to bother you. There's a trigger warning that other people have brought up that I actually didn't really register for me in this book, so not all of them are on the page. So good. And the thing is that I've heard about this book is that it's people's like least favorite in the series. Like, they love this one, but this one isn't even the best one. So that's kind of exciting because I love the series. I know that Aubin is really enjoying it still. He really liked the second one, but I'm having to be cautious of what I'm taking in right now and just making sure that while I also am reading about war and death, that I am reading other genres as well. So I would say I gave this 4 stars. I think the other thing that I will mention about it that maybe brought it down a little bit for me is just that the main character, Darrow or Darrow, I don't know, we were saying Darrow, but then we heard somebody else say Darrow, so let me know what you say. He doesn't really have, it feels like, his own motivation. Like, it feels like he's kind of doing his actions for other people, which isn't bad, but it just means that you're kind of sitting in the point of view of the character who is doing it for someone else rather than the POV of the person who really wanted it, which is a subtle difference, but did make a little bit of a difference of like, but like, why does he care? Why is he doing that? Like, why? Like, what is his why? So that, I think, knocked down a little bit for me, but it's incredibly well written. If you haven't read any of the Red Rising yet series, it takes a while. I would say it takes like the first, for me, it was somewhere between 50 pages and 100, where I started being able to like understand, because they talk about, as with any like fantasy, sci-fi, whatever world, there is a bit of world building. Like, there is a sense where you're reading words you don't know, you're reading names you don't know how to pronounce because you haven't been in this world before. So you are trying to learn either the magical system or their political system or whatever. But I feel like there are other books that kind of like ease you into it more. This doesn't. You were like in it and you just better like catch up. And I kept reading and being like, I was reading with Aubin and I would read a sentence out loud to him and I'd be like, I have no idea what that means. Like, what does any of that mean? Like, I feel like it's important, but I don't know what it means. So I would say that going in, but if you have patience to get through like that little bit, which I feel like if you read sci-fi or fantasy, you're kind of used to that a little bit, but this one definitely is like a hard crash into it. But It's so good. I can't wait to read the rest of the series. I mean, I can wait because there are so many fucking books, but like, I'm excited that I'm reading this one. So if you've been wondering if you should pick this one up, the answer is yes. Yes, you should. Okay, so like I said, I have to switch up genres a little bit in between books because I just do. It's where way my brain works. And I picked up one that has been on my TBR for a really long time. I was about to say that I was really excited to read, but I gotta say, and I posted about this on TikTok and Instagram as well, but sometimes the hype of a book gets so big that there's not really a way for me to like not have those thoughts, other people's thoughts going into the book. And I'm going to review this book, but I want to give a warning that I feel like I should probably read this at maybe a different time in my life when I've read some other stuff and maybe read other books of hers as well, because I feel like this was probably more of a situation where it was me and not the book, but also maybe I just didn't jive as much with a really popular book as much as everyone else did, and that's cool. Like, I can't yuck your yum. Like, a lot of people love this book. But I should just shut the fuck up and show you what it is. It's Beach Read by Emily Henry. I ended up giving this, I think, 3 or 3.5 stars. And I'm so sorry if that personally offends you. This is only my second Emily Henry book that I've read. I've read Book Lovers by her, which a lot of people don't like, I guess, but I loved that book. I loved Book Lovers. And I feel like I read Book Lovers before people were talking about it too much, so like I didn't really have any of those other thoughts in my head. But this one was really hard because I feel like as soon as I picked it up, I started seeing all of these videos where people were either raving about how this book is like one of their all-time favorite books, and then also seeing people who are like, I just really didn't think it was that good. And so I think I went into it kind of like looking for it to be spectacular or looking for why people didn't like it, and so it was really hard to drown out and have my own thoughts. So I'm just going to say that ahead of time because I really don't ever want to like yuck your yum. Like, this is a really popular book. I do enjoy Emily Henry. This is definitely not going to turn me off of reading her. I think it was still good. There just are things about it for me that I just didn't quite gel with. I'm going to say them quickly and just not stay too long on it because it's not the point. I read it. It was 3.5 stars. I still enjoyed it. I just didn't like a couple things. What are they? The thing that I had the most problem with was I don't like it when either a plot or a relationship hinges purely on the fact that people either do or mostly do not communicate. Like, my biggest critique for The Housemaid is Watching was that the whole plot hinges on the fact that the family isn't talking to each other, because if they just compared notes, it would have been fine. So I think I just don't enjoy it being like their whole relationship hinges on the fact that they don't just ask each other what they want. And I think that while they could be great as people individually, I think that their relationship, I was like, just talk to each other. You're being children and you're adults. The main thing for me was that she knew in college that he was like more of a fuckboy, and he pretty much said that he was, but then she just assumed that that's who he was as an adult. And it's like, and then he assumed that because like he was saying like, I'm trying to get close to you, I'm trying to let you in, that she understood that like she meant something to him. And I was like, all it takes is her being like, hey, I know this is how you've been before, that's not particularly what I'm interested in, how does it make you feel? That's it. The tension cannot for me be, I just don't know what he wants. I'm like, just fucking ask him. And if you feel like you can't ask him, he's not the guy for you. I think also what was triggering about this is that I've dated guys like this, where you're like, I don't, like, he's giving me signals that he maybe wants something more, but I know that he has said that he doesn't. But if I ask him, like, that could scare him away. Like, there was a guy I dated where my friends were like, just ask him. And I was like, no, because, like, what if that pressures him and then he doesn't want anything and then da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, if that's the case, he's not the guy. Like, if what you're wanting is a serious, committed, or not even serious, but like a committed relationship with someone, if you can't even ask them if that's what they too want, how do you expect to be in a committed relationship with them? I guess you get over that hurdle eventually, but it just felt very like, just ask him. And it felt like for him be like, just tell her what you want. So I think it hinged too much on that for me to really get enjoyment out of it, because I just kept reading it being like, can you just ask? Like, to me, I compare this to like Part of Your World with Abby Jimenez, where it starts as a situationship and then they fucking communicate about it, and then it's great. That's the shit I like to see. Fuckboy, non-communicative with each other. What? Also, this cover and this title have absolutely fucking nothing to do with the story. Not even like vibe-wise. Like, I was like, cool, beach read. I live in California. I was like, I could take this to the beach. It has none of those vibes. It's not even a beach, really. It's a lake, which I guess there's like the lakes that, I mean, I grew up in Colorado, so the lakes I'm around are not really like sand where you lay out like this. I know that there are other places in the world, but I'm just saying from my perspective, this means ocean, does not mean lake. And it also means like kind of like a fun, flirty, I thought this would be more vibes of like Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren or The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. I thought it'd be more like that, where it was like, it's beachy, but like we have our like conflict, whatever. If you haven't read this book, there are 2 different lake houses and it's 2 writers who switch genres because they're both in kind of writing slumps. And so they switch genres to see if they can write the other one's respective genre and get out of their slump. And, you know, from this cover, it sounds like that's already kind of like, okay, that's like a real life problem, but then it's like, but it's at the beach, it's gonna be fun. It's not. It's a lot about grief and a lot about losing a parent. And so I do want to have that trigger warning, because I would not go into this book being like, I'm going to be sad about my father's mortality. In this book, are you kidding? But you do, and you are. And I was like, calling my dad, be like, Daddy, love you, bro, because what the fuck? Anyway, 3.5 stars. I like Emily Henry's writing, as always, and definitely will read more of hers. This one just didn't do it for me, and I'm sorry. So this last one, I've seen almost no one talk about this, and even on Goodreads, not a ton of people have read it and rated it, and it was a book of the month pick, so I was actually a little surprised, but this was my August book of the month choice. It seems so different, and the premise was so interesting, and that is 5-Star Stranger by Tang, and it's her debut novel. Love her writing, will definitely read another one. It is not very long, but it did take me a while to get through, so make of that what you will. 5-Star Stranger is basically about a guy who, like, they live in a world where there's a thing, which, like, what's funny is there may be this in this world and I just don't know about it, but basically you can rent people to be stand-ins for different roles. So if you need an extra mourner at a funeral, if you need a best man for your wedding, it's really interesting. I would say the first third of this book, I was like, this is going to be 5 stars. Like, this is so thought-provoking. And it is. I think it's about this guy, and he basically has gotten hired to be the stand-in dad. He goes once a week and is a stand-in dad for a little girl, and has been for a few years, and basically what the repercussions are. And I think it's very interesting. The people that I would recommend this book to is people who are really interested in psychology, or people who enjoy books that are essentially character studies. That's really what this was. It was a character study, and I think it was a really thought-provoking commentary on, you know, like, social constructs and the social roles and just the roles that we play in each other's lives and what it looks like when somebody maybe doesn't have that role. And also, something I thought was really interesting is, like, it makes me think about, like, if I was going to play this person, and it's just like, how do we change ourselves to make the expectation for what role we fill for someone's life? So it's really interesting in that way. I would say I think I gave this 3.5 stars. I think this was 3.5 stars. I liked it. I would recommend it to a very few amount of people. I think it's just one of those books where you have to like character studies. You have to like really sitting with the character in this moment in time. And if you want something thought-provoking about society and the roles that we play, this is a really good one for that. But 5-Star Stranger was my August book of the month, and that's how I wrapped up the month. And those are the 3 books that I read. The one that I soft DNF'd, so I'll put it here because it was an audiobook that I was listening to from Libby, and it was My Own Magic by Anna Kloots. And I soft DNF'd it because I was, like I said, I was listening to it, and I got probably 35 to 40% of the way through, but kept having to renew it, and then eventually was like, it's not making me want to listen to it. Like, if I'm listening to a good audiobook, generally what happens is I'll be like, oh, like, I can go do this thing and I can listen to my audiobook while I do that. But I kind of was like, whenever I would be doing something where I could be listening to an audiobook, I'd be like, oh, I can listen to that. I'm like, so then I was like, I'm just gonna return it and soft DNF it. The reason it's a soft DNF. So Anna Kloots, if you don't know who she is, she's the sister of the woman who was married to the Broadway actor who contracted COVID pretty early on and was kind of like symbol to everyone of like, this could happen to like young, healthy people. Like, I think it really contextualized COVID for people during that time. And he was married to a woman named Amanda Kloots. At the time, after COVID and after his death, Amanda, his wife, and her sister Anna wrote a book about the experience, which I'll put here. And I did read that, and I really liked that a lot. After seeing that, I started following Anna on Instagram, and a big draw for me with Anna is that she is an American living in Paris, and I want to move to London. So I've always been like, oh, it's so cool, like getting to see the expat life, and she's a writer and photographer, and like she's very bubbly and cute, and I have really enjoyed following her. So My Own Magic is her first book, and it's a memoir. It's a memoir. And it talks majoritively about, it's like dual timeline of like her kind of like now, and then it's back to when she was married and ended up going through a divorce. And I know a lot of her story from following her, and I am really interested in reading the book. I think the audiobook was not the fit for me. I listen to a lot of biographies, and so I figured that this would be another one that was kind of an easy listen. I found that her performance was really distracting because it's her reading it, but then she like kind of acts out the scene. So like if she's saying a line from an argument where she was really upset, she sounds really upset, kind of like you would for a novel. Like if you're listening to a novel, you'll hear the actors do that, but to hear someone do that for their own memoir was a little bit jarring for me. And like I've listened to a lot of them, so I kind of know what they sound like, and it ended up feeling disingenuous and ended up being like, okay, which is just weird because I've watched her on social media, I've listened to her a lot, and it just wasn't the audiobook for me. So it's a softie enough because I'm not going to keep listening to it for sure, but I am interested in the book, so I will read it. In total, I ended up reading 3 books, and I listened to about half of Anna's book, and then stopped it. I'd love to know what you read in August. I feel like a bunch of people had kind of a slumpy August, and so I'm hoping that a resurgence of like new genres and new books and a new season is going to make me want to read again. So I'm already loving Fourth Wing, so I feel like I'm already getting back into it. And also, right now, I'm watching A Good Girl's Guide to Murder Netflix series, and I'm excited because I love that fucking series. It's so good. YA mystery. If you haven't read the series, do it. But if you're watching the show, please watch it with me. I am posting a watch and react video for every episode of season 1 that is out right now. And I would love to know what you're thinking. Like, watch it. It's like we're watching it together, and let me know what you think. So be on the lookout for that because that's going to be an ongoing series while I get through that. And if there are any books that have become movies or shows that you think I would like or think I should watch, let me know that too. So thank you for joining, and I hope to see you next time. I love you. Okay, bye.